Okay, so we finished our ice and water along our dormer edges here, along the front wall and the side walls here. And we're gonna go ahead and start laying down drip edge. So what this drip edge does, it's a metal piece of flashing here. It's gonna go along the front of the roof. And basically, if you do a side view here, this drip edge does exactly what its name says. Water comes off of here, and it gives about 5/8 of an inch for water to go past the fascia board and then drip off. That way water isn't constantly running down the front of the fascia, and it protects it. The fascia doesn't rot out as much, and it helps water not get behind the fascia as well. So what we're gonna do is we actually line the whole front of the roof, also up both gable sides. Basically anywhere that there's an overhang, it'll get drip edge. So it'll also get some along front and sides of this dormer as well. And again, that helps that water to run off and stay away from the fascia board. So what we're gonna do, same concept with this flashing. You wanna do the bottom first. And then we'll go ahead and do the sides. That way the sides overlap the bottom and water is able to run off cleanly. And we also have to think a little bit about practicality here and aesthetics. So what we're gonna do, we're not just gonna go ahead and lay this first piece down. We're actually gonna make a little cut here and a bend with our side, so it actually bends around the side of our roof. And it'll make a little bit more sense when we get to our side piece. But what it's gonna do is it's gonna basically make a white background for our side piece. So whenever we make our finish cut on our side piece, it has something to have a backer to, so it looks nice and clean. If we didn't do that, this little bend, when we do our finish cut on the side, we'd have two pieces that basically they don't meet up, and you have a hole there. It also helps for water to not go behind the drip edge. It's just a nice cleaner, a little bit more professional look. So what we're gonna do to do that is we're gonna take some tin snips here, and we're gonna cut the back. Basically, we wanna just be left with a little flap of this front part here to be able to bend around. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come up behind the back and come in maybe about 3/4 of an inch, and then we're gonna come and cut this back part completely off. All right, so we're left with the flap, and then we're also left with this top part. So then we're gonna also cut this top part off. Come in there, and if you get through the very top part and bend this back and forth a little bit, that'll break off just like that. And then you can bend this straight and then come in here and make a really nice clean cut. Leaving just that very front edge there. So we're left with just that little flap, and we're gonna bend that around. So some of these nicer drip edges here, they have this little bevel on the bottom. It helps to make a little slit right where you're gonna bend it. That way that bevel doesn't crimp the rest of your drip edge here. We'll bend it around. You can see how that little crimp helped us to bend, and that'll flow free there. And now we have a nice corner cut that we'll wrap around. Now when our side piece comes down, we'll have a backer there to keep water out, and it'll make a nice professional look once it's done. So we'll come over here, and now if you remember back when we did that fascia board, this is where it really makes sense that we put that bevel on that fascia board. So when we put this guy on here, we have something to nail to. If we didn't do that, you'd basically have, we have a good example here. I ran out of some 2x8 fascia board. You'd have this open square here, and there's just nothing to nail to. So it's good to bevel your your fascia board. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some roofing nails here. It's important to use stainless steel or galvanized nails when working on the roof so they don't rust out. We'll come over here and we'll place this on our edge and we'll scoot it all the way over until our corner here meets up flush. So we have our overhang there, and we'll go ahead and tack it with the nail. It's important to note, I like to, usually this drip edge has these little grooves here. I like to stay up a little bit. If you get volunteers and you don't tell them where to nail, a lot of times they'll go right along the edge here, and then before you know it, you'll have nails popping out the front of your drip edge. So it's a good tip to tell the volunteers or yourself to nail above this top strip here towards the top of the drip edge. That way you get enough meat of the fascia and you don't have any nails sticking out the front here. So we'll come back here now. And it's real important to just do one nail to start out with. Again, you kind of have like that pivot action going like we did with the ice and water. And then you can pivot it so you're nice and straight here. Make sure you're going nice and straight along the edge. And then you can pop another nail. Okay, so then we can go ahead and nail this one strip off. And then what we would do is we would continue with another piece of drip edge here. Pull one up. And basically we want to overlap about 4 inches to make sure we have a good seam. We don't want to take our piece of drip edge here and butt it right up to it. This is wrong because now we have a seam here and water can get in there. So you want to overlap it after we nail it here, and you'll have a nice tight seam. So what you can do is you can see that this metal's bent around to form the drip edge. You can actually just take your fingers and open this up just a little bit. That way when you overlap it, you can push this in nice and tight. We'll go ahead and do it here. Tack this piece in place here. And as you pull that piece apart, a good little trick, instead of using the metal part of your hammer to tap that into place, you can do it if you're really, really careful, but a lot of hammers have that waffle face. So if you actually just use the handle of your hammer and push that so it's nice and tight, you can nail through both pieces and you have a good seam. So we'll go ahead and nail this piece off. We'll trim it to length. Again, we're going to do that same cut on this side of the roof that we did over there, so we have that little flat bending around, and we'll get this piece nailed off. Okay, so we went ahead and finished nailing off this front piece of drip edge here. And we basically, it doesn't take too many nails. You just want to make sure it's on there good. And you don't have any dimples in it. So about every 2 feet is more than fine. And make sure you get a good nail over your seams here. So one important thing to note, just kind of to think ahead for aesthetics, is to kind of think of how your building is faced towards the road. So let's just say that our building here was, the side over here was facing the road. what you may want to think about doing is starting your drip edge on this side first. If you sight down coming this way, our overlap, you can see this little seam here because this back side overlaps this front side here. So basically you can see this black part of this seam here. And it's just, I mean, if you're a roofer, you notice it, but it's just much more aesthetically pleasing if you overlap your seam going the other way. So if you did this piece first, that way basically you can't see that seam now going this way. It's the same thing that you would do like during siding, is just trying to hide that seam from the road. So if the way that we did it on this way, it would work perfectly if our road was on that side of the house. If it's going across the front of the house, it doesn't really matter which way you overlap it, but just kind of keeping that in the back of your mind whenever doing your drip edge. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and take another piece of drip edge, and we'll come along the side here, and we're going to get ready to do this side piece. So the side piece goes on the very same way as our front, but what we're going to do now is we're going to make that side cut here to finish this off. So what we'll do is, if you actually put this piece in place, you have a little part that's overhanging. You can take a pencil and just trace that little back part there. And when you take this off, you have your cut that you are gonna make. So this piece here came out pretty straight. So you would go ahead and trim this little piece off, and then you would come across the front. Now, this is actually a pretty straight cut here. So you may be asking, why don't we just go ahead and move this up so we're nice and flush? I don't do that because it creates a little bit of a square here, and you just want to make a good backer for your shingles. So I'll go ahead and cut that little part out. Just take your snips here and cut that little guy out of there. Now you have a good finished edge for your side, and you've overhung the front here and made a good strong backer for your shingles, and you have a nice finished edge. So we'll go ahead and nail this off. On a typical house, you have a little bit larger run than we do on our shed here. You can see that our top overhangs our peak a little bit. So normally you would do like one piece, and then you'd have another piece at the top with a little bit longer of a run. But what you would do, let's just say our peak was right here, you would go ahead and you could take a speed square. I misplaced mine. But on this mark right here, you would then take a speed square and make a 45-degree angle. Then you could make that cut, and then you would bend it right along this point. And as you bend this, that 45-degree cut would then be perfectly straight up and down. And then you'd have a nice plumb cut right at your peak. And then you would keep this all at one piece. So you would then go ahead, nail off this front side here. You would put it in place, let the other side flap over. You would nail this front side, but you wouldn't nail the back side quite yet, because remember, you have to put your bottom piece on before you put a top piece on, so you overlap. So you would just leave that flap in there until you get your bottom piece just like this on that side on. Then you'd be able to overlap that part onto your drip edge, making that overlapping seam so water can then run off properly. So we'll go ahead and get these guys, we'll get this one put in place and the one on the other side put in place, and then we'll be ready to start our valley flashing.